Who is piloting the UAPs or UFOs constantly seen in our skies? Where are they from? Why are they here? How long have they been here? What is their mission on planet Earth? Do they come in peace or do they have more sinister motives? Join your host, Mad Mark, as he uncovers the answers to these questions and many more of the mysteries that have puzzled mankind for centuries on Who Are the Aliens? The history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. And now, here's Mad Mark. Today's episode, a deep dive into the Second Pyramid War, and did the Anunnaki ever explode nuclear weapons here on planet Earth? Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of Who Are the Aliens? The history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. I'm Mad Mark, and today we will continue our studies of Zecharia Sitchin's third book, The Wars of Gods and Men, published by Avon Books in 1985. As you can undoubtedly see, this is my first episode utilizing green screen technology. I am an entertainer, not a producer nor an engineer, so I ask that you all bear with me while I attempt to get this type of technology figured out. Okay, in episode 13, we discussed the First Pyramid War, the main result of which was that the god Seth, having been defeated by Horus, was banished from Egypt and ended up settling in the area we now know as Canaan. And, as we also discussed on an earlier episode, these gods were the landlords. The humans could only settle in a land that was allotted to them by their god. And the land which would eventually become Canaan, the land where Seth, a descendant of Enki, chose to settle, was under the rule of the Enlilite gods. So, Seth's trespass into Canaan meant that now all of the spaceport-related sites, Giza, the Sinai Peninsula, and the new Mission Control Center in Jerusalem, were all under the control of the Enki gods. Yes, of course, Ninhursag still controlled the Sinai Peninsula, but as we also covered in the past, she was now sleeping with Enki, so indirectly, Enki and his clan controlled it all. And this was a development that Enlil and his clan could not tolerate. And so, roughly 300 years later, according to the ancient texts, the Enlilites launched a war to dislodge Seth from his rule over Canaan and the new Mission Control Center there. And that became the conflict known as the Second Pyramid War, the details of which can be found in Sumerian, Akkadian, and Assyrian texts. The Enlilite forces were led by Enlil's foremost warrior, his son Ninurta. The first encounters in this Second Pyramid War took place in the Sinai Peninsula. Enki's clan was defeated there and chose to retreat to the mountainous areas of North Africa in order to regroup. But Ninurta rose to the challenge and in the second phase of the war carried the battle to the strongholds of his foes. And that phase resulted in many vicious and ferocious conflicts. But the final phase of this war was actually fought at the Great Pyramid of Giza itself, the last and impregnable stronghold of the Enkyites, where they were surrounded and besieged by Ninurta's forces inside the Great Pyramid itself until they finally ran out of food and water. So, let's break down this war now and examine it more closely. The majority of our knowledge of this war comes to us from the text entitled Legal e Und Malambi. The text names Ninurta as the leader of the Enlilite army, and although Enki, the great serpent, is named as the leader of the Egyptian deities, the army was in fact commanded by Marduk. This was obviously during the time when those two were still working together and on the same side. The texts go on to describe that Ninurta's obvious advantage in this war is credited to his unique weapons and his new airship, which had a wingspan of 75 feet. According to the texts, he was able to soar so high in this craft that his companions actually lost sight of him. The texts go on to say that in his winged bird against the walled abode he swooped down. As his bird neared the ground, the summit of the enemy's stronghold he smashed. Chased out of their strongholds, the Enki clan began to retreat, while Ninurta kept up the frontal attack. Enlil's grandson Adad roamed the countryside behind enemy lines, destroying the enemy's food supplies. As time went on, other gods such as Inanna Ishtar joined the battle on the side of the Enlilites. This onslaught forced Team Enki to retreat farther south, and it was then that the war assumed a ferocious and vicious nature. As the Enlilites' attack moved further south, they scorched the earth and made the rivers run red with the blood of the innocent bystanders, or the humans who were just going about their daily business, the innocent men, women, and children of the Abzu. And it was in these battles that the Enlilites also resorted to chemical warfare. We read that Ninurta rained on the city poison-bearing missiles which he catapulted into it, the poison by itself destroying the city. This city was known as Meslam, and those who were fortunate enough to survive this attack escaped to the surrounding mountains. But Ninurta, with his weapon that smites, threw fire upon the mountains and smote down those people. Obviously, some sort of laser weapon was involved. So, as I have said before, these Anunnaki gods may occasionally hurt one another in these petty wars of theirs, but who really suffers the brunt of the death and destruction? The humans. Just like it is now. They simply just do not give a damn about us. All you have to do is read these texts to discover that for yourself. Oh, sure, they may take favor on a particular human here or there, but the overall masses, completely expendable. What's the politically correct name for it these days? Ah, yes, collateral damage, or acceptable losses. Acceptable to whom, I ask? Sorry, but I have always found war to be repulsive and disgusting, because it's always the little guy, or in this case, the humans, who have to suffer for it. Anyway, the onslaught continued, and eventually Team Enki was forced to retreat to Giza and take refuge within the walls of the Great Pyramid itself, where the wise craftsman raised up a protective wall which the brilliance could not match, which was basically a shield through which the death rays of Ninurta could not penetrate. Now you may be asking yourself who this wise craftsman was. Well, unfortunately, the texts do not say. But since they were both there inside the pyramid, it had to be either Enki or Thoth. Another aspect of this war that I find interesting is that Nergal, actually a son of Enlil's, showed up at this point and decided to take sides with Enki's clan in defending the Great Pyramid. Recalling this event in the ancient texts, we read how Nergal at night stole out, and, carrying awesome weapons and accompanied by his lieutenants, he broke through the encirclement to reach the Great Pyramid. Entering at night, he came through the locked doors, which by themselves can open. A roar of welcome greeted him as he entered. But the high hopes of these besieged gods were soon dashed. As Nergal joined the defenders of the pyramid, he set to work strengthening its defenses through the use of the various ray-emitting crystals positioned within the pyramid. Seeing what was going on with Nergal assisting the Enki clan, Ninurta resorted to another tactic. He called upon Utu Shamash to cut off the water supply to the Great Pyramid by tampering with the stream that passed near its foundation. So now, huddled in their last stronghold and cut off from food and water, Team Enki did their best to ward off their attackers. Now, up to this point in the war, no major god had died from the fighting. As I've said before, humans dying in these battles of the gods was acceptable. But should a god get mortally wounded? Well, that was a different story. That was serious. The Anunnaki just could not allow any of that. I've already mentioned how many humans were slaughtered in this war and tossed aside as simply collateral damage. But just look how quickly things changed when a god got injured. At this point in the battle, Horus attempted to sneak out of the Great Pyramid disguised as a ram. I'm not sure how exactly he thought that was going to work, but in his attempt, he was struck by the rays of Ninurta's brilliant weapon, causing him to lose his eyesight. And immediately, there was an outcry for Ninhursag to step in and put an end to the fighting. It reminds me of little boys roughhousing in the backyard until one of them gets injured. Then the mommy hears the crying and has to step in, break it up, and tend to the injury of the hurt child. So Ninhursag shows up at the Great Pyramid, and Ninurta immediately provides her with clothing that will make her unafraid to go near the Great Pyramid. We are assuming it was something to protect her from the radiation being caused by Ninurta's beam weapon. So Ninhursag puts on the radiation suit and proceeds to approach the Great Pyramid. She shouts at Enki to surrender the pyramid and stop the fighting. And that's it. That put an end to the Second Pyramid War. Unbelievable. However, there were conditions of surrender and concessions were made by both sides. But to make a long story short, Ninhursag brought the terms of surrender from Enki to Enlil. He agreed to it. She then returned to the Great Pyramid to inform Enki that his terms had been accepted. Hey gang, Mad Mark here to let you know that I now have new t-shirts available for my show, Who Are the Aliens? The History of the Anunnaki on Planet Earth. You can find these cool new shirts by searching Who Are the Aliens shirts on Amazon or by clicking the link on my website at madmarktv.com. They are available in a variety of sizes and colors with delivery through Amazon, a name you know and trust. That's the all-new Who Are the Aliens t-shirts, just like the one you see me wearing right here. Get yours now. Enki and his clan departed the pyramid and left with Ninhursag to her abode in the Sinai. And the great impregnable pyramid stood unoccupied and silent. It was all a rather anticlimactic conclusion, if I do say so myself. One point that I would like to make is that we often hear researchers such as Billy Carson talk about the great sand sea glass found in various parts of the Middle East, including near the Great Pyramids, and the fact that extremely hot temperatures are required to create this glass out of sand. Temperatures such as those that might be created by setting off a nuclear weapon. Did the Anunnaki ever utilize nuclear-type weapons in their wars? Yes, but only once. And that happened quite a bit later. I'll get back to that in a moment. Is some of the great sand sea glass found in the Middle East due to nukes? Yes, but not the glass found near the pyramids. If a nuclear weapon had been set off near the Great Pyramids during this war, then there probably wouldn't be much left of them or the Sphinx. So let's examine this further. Science tells us that a temperature of 3,090 degrees Fahrenheit is needed in order to turn sand into glass. A nuclear explosion can generate temperatures of over 3,000 and 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and other estimates can go as high as 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit for certain areas near a nuclear blast. So that certainly would result in great sand sea glass being created. But what else can produce temperatures almost that great? Well, a high-powered laser can certainly produce temperatures of over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And what was the weapon that Ninurta was using to dominate the Second Pyramid War? A weapon that produced a beam so bright that it caused Horus to lose his eyesight? And how did the texts refer to Ninurta's brilliant weapon? This weapon which could scorch the earth, this weapon that threw fire upon the mountains and smote down the people. It sure sounds like a laser weapon to me. And don't forget that Enki was producing some sort of high-intensity beams with the crystals inside the Great Pyramid as well. Yes, laser weapons were used by both sides during this conflict, and that is why great sand sea glass can be found in and around the area of the Great Pyramid. But let's return to the nukes for just a moment. As important, as celebrated, and as discussed as these pyramid wars were and are, they were not the pinnacle of the Anunnaki conflicts here on planet Earth. You know, I am often asked, when and why did the Anunnaki eventually leave planet Earth? Well, first off, they never completely left. I've said many times, I believe that they are still running things from behind the scenes here, and that their crafts are spotted all the time. Even our government is acknowledging UAPs now, although they never mention the Anunnaki because they don't want us to know the entire truth. But there was a mass exodus of the Anunnaki from Earth several thousand years ago. I'm not going to dive into all of it just yet at this point, but I will give you a little teaser. The Anunnaki had nuclear weapons technology. Remember, a couple episodes back, I mentioned the war on Nibiru that took place long before the first Anunnaki ever landed here on planet Earth, and the final war there that almost destroyed their planet. That one was a nuclear war. And although they had kept a few of these weapons around after that happened, they hadn't actually used one for several thousands of years since that war. So many years, in fact, that the Anunnaki actually forgot just how devastating these weapons could be, and also the repercussions of what happens after you set one of these bombs off. But as we will learn on a future episode, a couple of those nuclear-type weapons were eventually smuggled here to Earth and used in a great final conflict, one that scared the Anunnaki gods so terribly that most of them fled the Earth in fear for their lives. And their presence on our planet was forever changed from that point on. Okay, enough about all that. Let's get back to the book and wrap up Pyramid War number 2. These days, if you visit the Great Pyramid in Giza, you will find its passages and chambers bare and empty, its complex inner construction apparently purposeless, its niches and nooks totally meaningless. And it has been so ever since the first human beings ever set foot inside it. But it was not that way when Ninurta entered it after Conquest in the Second Pyramid War around 8670 BC. The Sumerian texts tell us that now, yielded by its defenders, Ninurta entered unto the radiant place, and what he did after he entered it not only changed the Great Pyramid from within and without, but also changed the course of human affairs from that point forward. Can you just imagine what Ninurta must have felt as he entered the house which is like a mountain for the first time? What wonders would he find inside this great structure, conceived by Enki Ptah, planned by Marduk Ra, equipped by Thoth, and defended by Nergal? What mysteries of space guidance, what secrets of impregnable defense did it hold? On the smooth and seemingly solid north face of the pyramid, a swivel stone swung open to reveal the entranceway. Protected by the massive stone blocks, a straight descending passage led to the lower service chambers, where he could see a shaft dug by its defenders in search of subterranean water. But his real interest lie in the upper passages and chambers, where the magical stones were arrayed, minerals and crystals, some earthly, some heavenly, and some the likes of which he had never seen before. From them were the beamed pulsations emitted for the guidance of the astronauts and the defense of that great structure. Escorted by his chief mineral master, Ninurta inspected the vast array of stones and instruments, and as he passed by each of them, he determined their destinies: to be either smashed and destroyed, taken away for display, or to be installed as instruments in other facilities. Going up the ascending passage, Ninurta first reached its conjunction with the imposing grand gallery and a horizontal passageway. He followed the horizontal passage first, eventually reaching a large chamber with a corbelled roof. The rays emitting from this room came from a stone that was fitted into a niche in the eastern wall. It was the Destiny Stone, emitting a red radiance that was the pulsating heart of the pyramid. Ninurta was immediately filled with rage at the sight of it, for it had been this ray-emitting stone which had been fired at his airship during the battle, almost killing him. He ordered it to be pulled from the wall, taken apart, and completely destroyed. Ninurta then returned to the grand gallery, a most majestic room with a ceiling built in slanting sections, each one perfectly aligned so as not to exert any pressure on the segment below it. Multicolored lights glittered throughout the gallery as if provided by a rainbow. The many colors were provided by 27 pairs of crystal stones, evenly spaced along the entire length of the gallery's sides. These glowing crystals were precisely cut and placed into the ramps. Each stone emitted a different radiance, making its own contribution to the rainbow effect expertly created for the gallery. But Ninurta's interest lied elsewhere. His priority was the uppermost grand chamber and the pulsating stone that awaited him there. Atop the grand gallery, Ninurta reached a great step, which led through a low passage to an antechamber of unique design. There, he found 3 gratings, or portcullises, elaborately fitted into grooves in the walls and the floor, effectively sealing off the uppermost great chamber. But now, by pulling some cords, the great gates were raised, and Ninurta passed through them unchallenged. He was now in the pyramid's most restricted or sacred chamber, the one from which the guiding net or radar spread out to survey heaven and earth. This delicate mechanism, which made this possible, was housed inside a hollowed-out stone chest, placed precisely on the north-south axis of the pyramid. It responded to vibrations with a bell-like resonance. The heart of this guidance unit was the direction-determining stone. Its emissions, amplified by 5 hollowed-out compartments constructed above the chamber, were beamed out and up by 2 sloping channels leading to the north and south faces of the pyramid. Ninurta ordered this stone destroyed as well, and to make certain that no one would ever be able to restore this direction-determining function of the pyramid, he ordered that the 3 gratings or portcullises be removed as well. He removed 2 more stones before directing his attention to the sturdy stone which is in front, and summoning all of his strength, he ripped it free from its moorings, smashing it to the ground. It was now time to decide the destinies of the mineral stones and crystals positioned atop the ramps in the grand gallery. As he made his way along, he stopped in front of each one of them and declared their fate. Ninurta ordered several of them to be destroyed. Others, which could be used in the new mission control center, he ordered given to Shamash. And the rest were carried off to Mesopotamia to be displayed in various temples as reminders of the Enlilites' great victory. All of this, Ninurta announced, is being done not only for my sake, but for future generations as well. Let the fear of thee, O Great Pyramid, be removed from my descendants. Let their peace be ordained. Finally, he reached the apex stone of the Great Pyramid, and as he sent it crashing to the floor, he commanded, "Let the mother's offspring see it no more." And with that, the stones and weapons of the Great Pyramid that Ninurta despised so much were no more. The Second Pyramid War had reached its conclusion, but its ferocity and feats, as well as Ninurta's final victory at the Pyramids of Giza, were remembered long thereafter in epic and song. At this point in the book, Mr. Sitchin takes a deep dive into the peace talks that followed this great war. I'm not going into all of that here. However, it's a great read, and I highly recommend that you study it all for yourselves. But I will hit upon a few of the highlights for you. Any of the gods from the clan of Enki were allowed to return to Mesopotamia that so desired to. But the most interesting development from this peace conference was that Thoth was now declared the ruling god of Egypt, or Kemet, as we've already discussed. Thoth would be the keeper of the secrets of the Giza pyramids, a rather fitting ending, if I do say so myself. And that is where I will leave you for this episode. You have quite a lot to digest there, and we have so much more to cover and learn. I'm Mad Mark, and I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If so, please like, share, and comment. It helps so much. And also, tell your friends and help spread the word about this show. Also, if you have any questions regarding the content discussed on this program, just message me through madmarktv.com or on any of my social media platforms. I also wish to remind everyone that listening to this podcast is no excuse to not read the book that we are discussing here, The Wars of Gods and Men by Zecharia Sitchin. It is an amazing work, and I am leaving out much information in order to keep the podcast flowing properly. So do yourselves a favor and read that book. Who Are the Aliens? The History of the Anunnaki on Planet Earth is written and produced by me, Mad Mark. All media used in this episode is done so under the protection of fair use for the purposes of teaching. Today we have taken another step in our ongoing journey to find the truth. I promise you that things will get more and more interesting the further we delve into this topic of who are the aliens, the history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. Bye for now. This has been Who Are the Aliens? The History of the Anunnaki on Planet Earth with your host, Mad Mark. Join us again on our next program when Mad Mark will once again uncover the answers to more of the mysteries that puzzle mankind.